Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we'll go from the Mojoverse to Earth 616 to the ruins of the Illuminati headquarters to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the man without fear, Chris.
I'm your friendly neighborhood Brit.
Alliance
Assemble.
assemble. Words are tough. This is
Yes.
volume 108, and I even wrote this. I wrote it out there, so I said I'm not going to go flying from the hip like I did for the review. But
I'll be honest, I didn't read it there, so I didn't see it. I would have butchered it too, though.
Yeah. So yes. So this is volume 108. We are post Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and we got a lot of fallout from this coming from the writer and the box office. So Brent, how's your week going?
It is. It has been a week. It's been a week. Yeah, like just been a little bit under the weather. No, not COVID. Tested negative for that 3 times. But and then on top of that, super busy at work. And it's only been 90 degrees all week with a broken air conditioner. So at this point, I'm hopefully on the mend. The weather is coming back down. The air conditioner is working. Tomorrow's Friday. Let's get through it.
Yeah, it has been a week for me. It's been a little rough one at work as we march towards the end, getting everyone through to the very end of the school year. But had a deck restained, and I'm looking forward to the weekend too. It's definitely not as hot. It's been a little bit cooler and lighter at that point here. So we're wondering exactly what summer is going to be like, because our weather has been schizophrenic, to say the least, in North Carolina, at least in my area. So, but yeah, so we got some interesting news to talk about. But to kind of put out first, we want to thank everyone for watching and listening to our Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, for our panel, the live listeners, the audio listeners. Brent and I kind of track the 3-day kind of downloads and listens, and it is now our number 2 most downloaded episode of Marvel Alliance. First place is still up where No Way Home. We don't see that being beaten by the numbers it gave us, but it's definitely we definitely appreciate you all that have either just started it because of the movie, and hope you're sticking with us. And if you've been a long-time listener, we really appreciate you and your downloads and listens.
Yes, thank you so much for all the support. It was pretty awesome to see that. Like at the box office itself, Strange only trails Spider-Man, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Steve Ditko's Great Creations doing both putting up good numbers everywhere.
But yeah, again, we want to thank our illustrious GUA panelists for joining us for that. Couldn't have done that without you all having a good time with us. So, but speaking of the GUA, look at that nice little segment. Let's talk about our network itself. So this show is part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance network with 8 shows on Mondays, alternating bi-weekly. We got Ranger Alliance alternating with Slice of Film, DC Alliance on Tuesdays, superhero discussions on Wednesdays, Star Wars Alliance on Thursdays, this show on Fridays, a walk through the multiverse on Saturdays bi-weekly, and my show World's Finest True Believers as last Sunday of the month. And that was coming in a couple of weeks, so we'll have a new episode dropping soon. If you want to check out any of these shows live, you can subscribe to the Geekverse YouTube podcast channel, and you can catch DC Alliance live on Monday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Star Wars Alliance on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and this show on Thursday nights at 9:10 Eastern Standard Time. And all those 3 shows also have their own solo feed. So if you want to check those out separate from the GUA feed, you just search that in your podcatcher of choice. And we also have a Patreon. So if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we got 2 tiers. Our $1 tier is our tip jar to say, hey, you think we're doing a good job. And then we've got our $5 tier, which is our ad-free episodes, Patreon exclusive shows, and early access episodes. We can watch this all day. Brent, our Marvel Alliance MCU Rewatch Patreon show. We're recording episode 5 next week. And what movie will we be talking about?
Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2. When we meet Rhodey for the first time, sort of.
He's here. Just deal with it.
That's right. Oh, I love that entrance.
Yep. So, but yeah, if you want to join us on Patreon, just go to www.patreon.com/GUA network to become a patron. Again, patrons, we appreciate our patrons. We can't do this without your support. And Brent, to entice people to join our Patreon, what are we going to do for, the lovely listeners?
Well, we talked about it. We decided, hey, it might be a good idea to release one of these episodes that we've been doing just so they can kind of hear, because they're not like regular reviews. They're more just kind of conversations around the movies themselves. So we're going to release that first episode here. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know the exact date we're releasing it, but it's pretty soon. I need to figure that out with Snell.
Yep,
But
it's going to be soon. It might be as soon as sometime next week.
it might be that it's ready to go. So just need them to hit the switches, I guess. But that first episode was on Captain America, the First Avenger, and of course the Agent Carter one shot. So hopefully people will enjoy that. And don't worry, that's not replacing an episode of this. Just a bonus that week.
Yeah, to give back to you all and to say that, hey, that is just a sampling of what we offer on our Patreon. You got Joe doing his Multiverse Minutes, marching down, reviewing the episode of The Boys to the new season. You got Travis's Top 5. You got Batman 89 reviews with Clay and Travis Snell. You've got Katie doing her canon, non-canon look at Star Wars with her husband at that point. So a lot of great stuff on there. So if you aren't a patron, please consider joining us. Or if you just want to check out that preview and then join us later, we appreciate all the support. But if you can't join us on Patreon, if you can spare 30 to 90 seconds and rate the Marvel Alliance feed and the GUA feed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whatever podcatcher of choice may be. And last but not least, we want to thank our official sponsor, organicpricebooks.com, for omnibus collected edition and hardcover needs. JP and the crew at OPB have got it going on with excellent customer service, impeccable packaging, ships around the world with many different options to ship in. Again, showing the list of stuff. We got War of Kings reprint. We got Silver Surfer by Dan Slott omnibus. Secret Wars. Hey, look at that. Not the Secret Wars that the MCU is marching towards, but the original. That's coming back into print in omnibus form. So check that out. Use that code MarvelGUA at checkout for $10. $2 off every single order. You can use that multiple times, as much as you want. It lets them know that you are a listener of the show. So again, thank you, Organic Price Books, for being our sponsor. All right. So if you are watching live, actually, before we get into the news, we do have a programming note. We're taking a switchback. We're moving to Wednesday night next week. This is just a temporary switch because Brent's needing to do some repairs in the multiverse on Thursday night. Things got a little out of hand, he told me.
Yeah, basically my daughter is in 4th grade and is doing there's a program at school that was going to conflict, and it's a really big deal at this school because every year the 2nd graders put on a luau. Yes, I went to this school, I did it as well, and her 2nd grade year was the first year of COVID, and so they are having this year's 3rd and 4th graders who missed it participated in as well. So it's a big deal at this school. So I wasn't going to be able to make it for this. So we're just bumping ahead a day.
We're bumping ahead a day at that point, but Brent, you didn't have to tell the reality. You could just gone with
no,
it.
It's all right. It's all right. I don't mind. I don't mind being honest.
It's all good. But yeah, so we will be going live on Wednesday night. The audio will drop as usual on Friday morning, but we'll be joined by a variant from the multiverse as well. So check out who might be joining us next week. We'll keep that to ourselves. But yeah, Wednesday night next week, same time, different day. So again, Wednesday night, 9-10 Eastern Standard Time. So check us out there.
I mean, cheesy grade school programming, right? The parents who are listening, they get it. They understand.
I get it. I was just having fun with just tying it into Marvel, but there you go. I get it. Trust me.
It's gonna be so cheesy.
And we're going to love every minute. We'll take thousands of pictures.
Absolutely.
So. All right. So no main topic this week. So we got a bunch of news items to look at, but we are going to start off on a somber note. If you're watching live, the background is a tribute to, in 8 days, listeners, we've lost 2 greats, starting with Neil Adams at the start of this. And then last Friday, we lost another great. George Perez lost his battle with pancreatic cancer at the age of 67. That image in the background of this is from JLA Avengers #3, that splash page. Perez had just some of the biggest impact on DC, Marvel, just the industry as a whole. And that splash page is just a testament to like he was the king of group shots when it came into it at that point. I mean, just one of those people that just could have such an this was part of such great moments in both major companies' histories. Brent, what are some of your kind of favorite memories of Perez's work?
Well, I mean, of course, there's Crisis, right? I mean, how could
Hmm.
you ever forget Crisis? There's also the run of Avengers that he did with Busiek. I
Yes.
did not read it as it was coming out, but I got a couple trades of it. I found them at a comic store or something and picked them up when I was in college, and that's when I read them. And it's so good. I told my wife that he passed away, as I told her, it's like we knew it was coming, but this is like the legend of the highest tier. Like when DC and Marvel last crossed over and had a Justice League and Avengers team up thing, he's the guy that got to draw it. Like he's that big of a deal, right? And
Hmm.
so it definitely a huge loss. I mean, it seriously up there with just the whoever the most famous person is you've heard related to comics. He is on that level,
Yeah.
arguably higher.
Yeah, like you said, from Crisis on Infinite Earths to Infinity Crisis. At that point, one of my favorite covers was issue number one. His cover, it's got as one of my posters. Um, from going to Final Crisis Legion of Three Worlds, seeing him do three different versions of the Legion at that point, as you
Yep.
said, Avengers, Infinity Gauntlet,
Teen Titans.
Teen Titans, like taking a team of that with the Teen Titans and creating with Marv Wolfman a series that rivaled and many times beat out X-Men for sales.
Yeah, back
Um,
then, absolutely did.
yeah, so you got the Korvac saga, and again, he also had stints as writer, artist, and writer. One of the most famous ones was Wonder Woman. Post Crisis, he got to retell and lead up the team that would retell the origins of Wonder Woman. And it has been a huge impact on not just that character as a whole, but it was a huge influence on Patty Jenkins' first film with Gal Gadot. Like you said, Teen Titans, probably the most famous storyline, the Judas contract. But yeah, like you said, Crisis on Infinite Earths, just the Infinity Gauntlet, like just a you can't, like, so many different people, writers and artists, just looked up to Perez, and I had an opportunity to meet him just once when he came through here over 10 years ago, to Charlotte for the Heroes Con. And if you're watching live, I'll share this, but this is me meeting Mr.
Oh, that's great.
Perez. And just like when people tell you stories about who he is and just how infectiously nice and kind of a person, he would walk around the con, you'd literally yell George, and he would stop, have a conversation with you. He had a table set up, but literally this was a dream of mine. When I knew he was coming in, I had to go at least meet him. I've got my, he signed my issue one of Infinite Crisis, said he drew the cover of, and plus my absolute edition of Crisis on Infinite Earths. But he even stopped as he was summoned through the absolute edition and just randomly spoke to me for like 5 minutes about a particular favorite panel he had. I wasn't even thinking of that. And just getting those 5 minutes just with him in this picture means the world to me. And the world has lost, the industry has lost just a man who the comment, we always say this and it sounds cliche, but there will not be another Perez. And there doesn't need to be another Perez, but we are better off as fans for having to have experienced him. If you've never met him, but his work, it's literally I had to stop and just put my head down, just because, like you said, we knew it was coming. He didn't decided not to seek treatment for it. He wanted to live out without having to go through the treatments at that point. But man, just just a loss in 8 days again. Neil Adams and George Perez losing their lives.
Yeah, I was just thinking about some of the work he's done, and like everybody knows the big DC stories and the Marvel stories, and
Mhm.
I'm honestly not sure if I've talked about it on this show or not. I know it's come up on fans before, but like CrossGen was a huge important publisher for me that I
Mhm.
love their work, and he was involved with them. He had an exclusive contract with them for a while, and so it's like he really did just touch. Like it seemed like every area in comic books, just every company he put his stamp on, and he master of the group shots. That feels like an understatement, but
Yeah.
is there anybody else? Is there anyone else who can
I,
do a
I,
group
I,
shot like
I,
him?
I mean, again, he's the gold standard to me. So there may be
Yeah.
people that have taken impact on him, but I don't want to say like again, he's my top, and there's a reason why, just what even though people griped about only allowing 7,000 copies of the reissue for the only time at this point, JLA Avengers, just seeing the pictures of him sitting down and reading what they were able to do, just putting it back out there, just seeing his happiness again. I mean, there was a way to give back to him.
Yeah. So
So
rest in peace and thank you.
yes, thank you for everything, and our thoughts and condolences go out to his friends and family, and to rest of you fans of George Perez. He was one of a kind, and definitely, his loss will be felt in the industry. So all right. Well, there is no easy transition to that, but we will do our best and move on to, as we said, the fallout from Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And we'll start off as we always do after a week after a review. Is our box office man Brent? So tell us what it's did in the box office first weekend. Where are we at right now with it?
Yeah, it did pretty well. 187 opening weekend domestic numbers. The original estimate was 185, which for the record was my prediction. And then it had
But
the
we did try,
actuals.
but we did Price's Right rules, so you still lost.
My Price is Right rules, I would win because I came in under it.
Oh, okay. All right. You're right then.
I have receipts on that for the record. But
You
regardless,
do.
the actuals came in at 187. Just a phenomenal opening for Doctor Strange. Are you kidding me? Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch, 187 million. Who would have ever thought? It was actually I think that's is that number 8 all time? I'm not sure about that now. I need to double check. But
Yeah.
worldwide, it's at 532. The worldwide number. So 532 million. A lot of people are thinking a billion is on the table. I personally, I want to see what the second week drop looks like.
Yeah, I mean, what would be your prediction for this? Again, it's okay, let's put kind of stuff out there at that point. Okay, it got a B plus cinema score, which when I
It's
always
not.
kind of
It's not good. Let's be clear. People try and pretend that's good. It's really not.
it does, like you say, Rotten Tomatoes I think a cinema score has a bigger impact because that is done literally by the fans looking. I didn't know Rotten Tomatoes has their own audience score, but more people are putting more stock in cinema score. But yeah, B plus. I only chuckled just a little bit. Yes, you're right, Brent. It has B plus when it's like the third lowest one. It's just like, man, it's that's an amazing B plus at that point for a movie. I like I said, if you listen to our review, I really enjoyed it. But what do you see? I don't think there's nothing major coming out until Top Gun. So it definitely could hold the number one slot. But the question is, will it dip? Do you see it going higher than 50% drop?
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, just about everything goes higher than 50% drop. The real thing is it gonna how deep into the 60s is it gonna be? Because that's
Yeah.
where it's gonna be. If it's got a 70% drop, going Morbius style, that'd be a disaster. And hey, my lights just shut off.
I know. Yeah. I like the mood lighting though.
That would
Let's keep
be
that.
that would be terrible. All the game says 11 all time domestic opening. Thank you for that. Cinema score and Rotten Tomato scores are not great. So
They're
I just
not.
looked up the Rotten Tomato scores. They're fine. It's 75% from the critics and 87%. That's not keeping anybody from going to see it. They're fine.
No, I think when you get into the 70s, people again, it's this whole thing. Marvel is expected to be in the 90s, maybe high 80s at that point. When you start getting to the 70s, people get nervous and say, "Oh, are we leading toward
They're fine.
Eternals?"
Eternals, yeah. Those are this box office wise is going to be fine. Let's just go ahead and shoot it out there.
Okay.
I'll say 64% drop. Just going to throw it out there. That's just going to be my guess. So we'll see. And when it ends up being worse than that, bummer. And if it's better than that, then great. Is it
Well,
gonna hit it?
well, here's the thing. I'll throw out mine. I will say.
Now I'm writing them down because
Yeah, no, write it down. I don't mind. This is a numbers game at that point. I have as much chance of being right as I do wrong these days. um, you said 64.
Yeah.
I will go 67. I'll
All
go
right. All right.
67 at that point. And I did realize, and I'm almost certain, I'm almost really positive. I didn't when we gave our scores for Doctor Strange. I don't believe I gave my score out of 10. So I will go on the record right now that my score out of 10 for Multiverse Matters is an 8.7.
Okay, all right, there you go.
So
I don't think you did either.
I
That's
I
kind of
really
funny.
I was so focused on where it fit in my overall rankings, I didn't even think about lost track. So yeah, I'll stick with 67. So you're at 64. Um,
Realistically, with that kind of drop, if it still it does decent worldwide, a billion is on the table. And like you said, there's nothing until Top Gun. Like that's it. And yes, Top Gun will come in and understandably, take number one the weekend and knock Doctor Strange off of that. But there's really nothing else until then. So
yeah, so and that comes out Memorial Day weekend, so it's got basically 2 weeks to where it kind of is on its own this weekend and next weekend.
yeah, I really need to
Um,
find time to get there again, but I'm not so sure it's gonna happen. This month is
I,
horrible.
I'm still I'm depending on how this next week, if that drop goes better, if it goes to your 64 does better, I will put a billion on the table, but I'm still not there at the billion yet just because of how it did very well, but I just don't feel this getting to a billion, and I'm not one of these crazy people. Oh, it's a failure. No, it's not a failure. Not every Marvel movie, and we don't have every Marvel movie hitting a billion at that point. But when you get into the idea that Top Gun will take a chunk out of it, and people will say, well, by that point, it's not making that much more money. But again, people will make immediate turn. And after Top Gun, you have Jurassic World that comes up basically a week and a half after that. Though when you start hitting those tail end of its 45-day run, that will kind of take a hit on maybe it hitting a billion. So I'm not there yet. I'm not confident it's going to hit a billion.
Yeah, I could see it falling short for sure. 800-900 million, very possible.
So Fanboy Clay's in the chat asking what was the first Strange overall box office.
600 something. Let me pull that up real quick. See what I can find. Wow, that how does that not say it?
All in the game thinks he's got it. 677 million.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
That's
So it'll definitely overtake the sequel will overtake it, which is
it'll pass it this weekend.
yeah, it that is a studio kind of like that's a goal on the list. Your sequel needs to overtake the original. So
Yeah, which didn't used to always be the case. A lot of times sequels didn't, but
mhm.
lately, I mean, especially the Marvel sequels. I would need to fact check this, but I think the sequels on all of the MCU ones, I think have improved.
Yeah, that's a good thing to look up. Yeah.
Maybe not Avengers 2 Age of Ultron. In fact, I'm pretty sure not that one. And I need to double check like the Ant-Man movies. But other than that, I think they all have.
Okay. Yeah. The other question I put in our notes was, all right, taking this idea, what Doctor Strange did, do we see Thor: Love and Thunder in its first weekend meeting what Strange did, or doing less or more?
187 million opening weekend.
We'll go domestic.
Gosh, Thor, Jane, the Guardians.
I mean, despite what a lot of people, again, we know certain members of our community at that point have very divided opinions on it, but the general audience really liked Ragnarok. And this
Yeah,
is
because it
Taika,
was
and
awesome.
this is Taika doubling down on that.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, go big or go home. Yes, I think it will match or exceed the 187.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one as well. I could definitely see that. It'll be interesting to see if and when we get that second trailer, what that kind of showcases. And I'm pretty confident we're going to get that second trailer because seeing a lot of buzz about people who have seen Christian Bale's Gore, the God Butcher, and they're basically saying, again, this could be hype at that point, saying I think it's a little hyperbolic until we see it, but saying he's definitely going to be a MCU top tier villain. But we'll have to see.
We'll find out soon.
Yeah. All in the game saying Doctor Strange 2 currently at 532.5 million worldwide. Yeah, all sequels have done better. Second trailer, yeah. S Bubs in the chat. Welcome, S Bubs. Second trailer will have a lot of gore, yeah. Because again, it's the villain. You're always going to need to at least see that villain. But I'm excited seeing Christian Bale regardless. This is not a man that will just take a role, especially a comic book movie role, just because he gets a paycheck. He doesn't need it. So so it's gonna be fun. But yeah, I'm with you a little bit more. But yeah, we'll revisit the box office next week, see how big the drop was. And all right, so our next one, continuing on with Multiverse of Madness. Michael Waldron has been speaking, the screenwriter for the movie. He's been making the rounds and kind of talking about different things. So he's confirming that he talked about to Rolling Stone magazine about the possibility of Tom Cruise's appearance in the film. So when asked, he said, "Yeah, that was totally made up. I mean, there's no cut footage of Tom Cruise, but I love Tom Cruise, and I said to Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige at one point, I was like, could we get Tom Cruise's as Iron Man? I remember reading about that in any cool news back in the day that Tom Cruise was going to be Iron Man. And he went on to say that how cool it would have been to have Tom Cruise in the movie, but he was shooting Mission Impossible 7 and 8. He clarified that bringing Cruise in was considered, but ultimately never happened because of availability. So Rolling Stone asked, so to be totally clear, did anyone reach out to Tom Cruise? Waldron said, I don't believe so. I just don't think it was ever an option because of availability. So, we remember as we march towards this, people looked at what we revealed again. Oh, by the way, we're in spoiler territory here at that point, especially
Yep.
with some of our questions. So if you have not seen Doctor Strange Multiverse Madness, I'm sorry we ruined. Tom Cruise is not in the movie. We are about to get into spoiler territory for that film. So 3, 2, 1. Everyone thought Maria Rambeau was Superior Iron Man.
Not everyone.
Not
for the
too big.
record.
I shouldn't have said that. Everyone, but
A lot of people did.
A lot of people were analyzing that and getting HD shots of that. I don't know why I said everyone, but like a lot of
I
people.
think there was a lot of wish casting going on there, just
Mhm.
hopeful. And I mean, sure, it would have been interesting, but
Yeah.
I'm happy with Maria.
I mean, I want to say that some people wanted some explanation of the Ultron bots are there. Well, who could have created that? Well, in this case, I would go with Reed Richards at this point. I mean,
That
we
would be
didn't
my
need to.
guess.
We didn't have an explanation, but that was my headcanon on that one.
I mean, it's easy enough to say that Hank Pym or Tony Stark did make them, but they introduced Reed by saying he's the smartest man in the universe. Maybe he was able to, put that suit of armor around the world and make that work.
Yeah.
Unless we ever hear otherwise, I assume him.
Yeah. One does have to remember just how packed Cruise's schedule is, whether he is piloting fighter jets in Top Gun or playing Ethan Hunt. He's always got something to go. So if Marvel Studios was ever going to get serious of it, it's a possibility. And there's always that looming Secret Wars project that's happening. So it's never say never, but I'm fine not that we didn't see it. In my opinion, I think we got the cameos that we did have were more than enough. In fact, we'll talk about that later in our listener feedback section a little bit, but I'm okay without seeing him.
Yeah, I mean, if they ever do it someday, cool. If not, whatever, it's fine.
Gotcha. We'll kind of continue on with him speaking about, what other cameo did not make it, and that would be Kang the Conqueror. In an appearance on Deadline's Hero Nation podcast, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Michael Waldron addressed why Kang the Conqueror was not in the sequel. He said, to me, it felt like we had the biggest, best bullet already in Wanda. That when working with Sam, and it was like we really should make the decision to make Wanda the antagonist of the film. It was exciting, and part of that was the feeling of, geez, we can't let another movie go have that fun. It is because that she's going to be so great. And I think if you had introduced Kang, as great as Jonathan Majors is, and as great as he is going to be in playing the character, you would have risked the movie just getting maybe overstuffed. I completely agree with that. I know we had talked about the possibility of, again, being the multiverse. Loki really cracked it open with that. So of course he should have some sort of impact on it. Could it have worked? Sure. But again, I agree with him that with Wanda being our main antagonist, it would seem thrown in. And I'm trying to rack my brain in the sense of like how it would have worked and not seem just shoehorned in.
there were rumors of like Loki and Sylvie and Mobius appearing in this movie, and so I kind of was part of me was a little surprised they weren't. I never really anticipated King being in this. I guess it's just because I had assumed Quantumania is the next time, or maybe Loki season 2 is the next time we would see him.
No, it's gonna be. It's gonna. I think it's Quantumania because he's confirmed for that.
Well, he is confirmed for it. I just don't know the order.
I don't think we're. Well, they had to switch, so I think we're getting Quantumania first now in February. So Loki's just getting ready to start filming in June.
Right. So
So
probably Quantumania then.
yeah, but it's we get into this whole idea. We kind of. I'll refer back to the whole thing of okay, when's the next trailer? Oh, when's the Thor trailer? Okay, now pretty soon we're gonna be hearing why don't we see a Black Panther trailer? What does that mean? Is the movie delayed? Like we keep on want. I mean, this is just fandom in general. I'm okay still waiting to see Kang proper because we really haven't seen Kang the Conqueror. We have seen he who remains. We have not seen Kang yet.
Right. And that works for me. I mean, we got like a statue of him, so we have like a glimpse, an idea, but
Yeah.
like the actual character, no. And like, well, was it that he who remains said something like, "Just wait till you see my variants, or wait till I come back,
Yep.
see you in a minute."
Yep. Warning them at that point
Hmm.
about that. But yeah, so yeah, that's all the Doctor Strange news we got. So let's take our first ad break before we get into the rest of the news. So as you know, listeners, these ads help keep the lights on in the Geek Ultimate Alliance network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud. So I'm gonna give you a 3 count to turn that volume down before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. So all right, moving on. Speaking of Loki, let's head back to Mr. Waldron speaking about, in this case, season 2 of Loki. So he was sat down with Digital Spy to talk about the Tom Hiddleston led series. And Waldron first teased that Multiverse of Madness and Loki would have some sort of connection, saying everything leads into everything, right? And he confirmed that, well, I mean, look, everything leads into everything. We've hired a couple of great directors, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. Loki season 2 directors are brilliant. And this is a big confirmation. It's the first time we've got confirmed. And Eric Martin has taken over as head writer for season 2. So the creative team is fantastic. As Tom Hiddleston, who plays Loki, once said, there's plenty more mischief to come. So in the past, Deadline actually reported that Martin was writing all 6 episodes of season 2. So again, now we've got a confirmation of, well, at least Deadline saying 6 episodes. And this marks the first time that Waldron confirmed the news of Martin's head writer gig. Martin is credited as writer for the 4th episode of the show, the Nexus event, and the 6th for All Time Always episodes of Loki season 1. His experience of handling emotionally driven and action packed episodes during season 1 should be added to boost that he is set to take over for the upcoming season of installments. It's also fitting that the Loki scribe will now lead the charge of the writer room, mainly because of a smooth transition in order since he wrote the season 1 finale. So, what do you feel about this confirmation that Waldron is officially stepping away from show running, and we've got at least, like they said, a likely person that was already part of the team now taking over?
Well, I, I will miss Waldron. Basically, his involvement. I thought he was fantastic. I like the work he did there. I like the work in Loki. I like the work he did in Doctor Strange. That said, Eric Martin is credited for my favorite episode of this, writing my favorite episode of the series, and what I believe is one of the best episodes of Marvel television
Mhm.
on Disney Plus. Period. With that being the finale of season 1. So I'm not, I can't, I guess, be too upset because, well, yeah, I would rather have them both involved. At
Mhm.
least it's the person credited with writing that episode who's stepping in to fill that void.
Yeah, and I know that, especially I'll point out Mr. Snell was disappointed not only director and now writer not coming back to it, gives him pause. And like with
Sure,
everything,
sure.
it is definitely valid to say that, okay, now we're entering the unknown territory, deal with the devil we know versus the devil we don't. But I'll say it before and I'll say it again. Let's wait and see what we get. expectations are just high in general, just by how well received and how critically acclaimed Loki season 1 is. So I don't think they're kidding themselves that, hey, all eyes are on you. You basically have what many consider to be the best Disney Plus show next to WandaVision on for the MCU's Disney Plus series.
Exactly. So I mean, I think they're going to be fine. I'm not. Let's put it this way. I don't have any reason to overall doubt it.
Yeah. Let's see. Fanboy Glaze saying Snell would much rather get the Moon Knight Riders on Loki. Hmm, I don't know about that. I think you're having some fun there.
I don't know. Clay and Snell trolling each other doesn't
I know,
sound right.
yeah. I mean, he's not even here to defend himself, so you never know. He will be editing this, so be careful what you say. um, all right. So next story again coming from Waldron, talking about how season 2 is going to differ from this from the first. So speaking on Deadline's Hero Nation, he was addressing what the changes will kind of be and hinting towards it. While he admitted that he's not leading actor Tom Hiddleston, who may know more at this point. Waldron wanted to find a way to tell a a new story for the character. He said, "That's the trick, right? My name isn't Tom, so you're not going to get a good answer out of me. But we talked about in creating the show in the first season, the only way it's worth doing to me is if you find a new story to tell with this character." And it did. It felt like we had a whole new emotional ground to cover with Loki, and I was excited about that. And I think that's the only way you could do a season 2. And I think we absolutely found that. It's a great continuation of that story that feels different than season 1 and hopefully subverts the expectations in the same way season 1 did. So again, this is the only Disney Plus MCU show that has seen a season 2 outside of What If. So this is the only live action season 2 we have gotten from these shows. And so Waldron made it very clear that one of his goals was to bring something different at that point. So like you said, going with the idea that this is going to come after Quantumania, not only are we dealing with the ramifications of the end of the season, but what ramifications from Quantumania will come to season 2? Will we pick up immediately where we left Loki, or will we see a time jump?
The thing with time travel, we could see both. It turns out.
Yeah,
I
you win. You win on that.
I'm eager to see what they do with the second season. I'm eager to see how they're going to handle it, because something that you've heard people talk about and try and excuse away the lack of connections between the MCU and earlier incarnations of Marvel television was how hard it is to work with shows that are on a season basis. They're trying to pump out so many episodes every year or whatever. This will be the first real attempt at that. Yes, of course, What If is getting a season 2 as well, but by design, that is its own thing separate that doesn't have to follow anything. This isn't going to be that way. Is it just going to be like any other new project? Maybe, but I'm excited to find out what they're going to do with it.
I'll be even more curious about who's new joining the cast, because we pretty much have most of the major support. Obviously, Tom Hiddleston being the lead, but all other supporting cast members, I think, have confirmed that they are returning.
Yeah, I think all the majors did. So
Yeah, so
it'll be find out. But as long as we have Loki, Sylvie, Mobius, like anyone else, those three are the big ones.
don't forget Miss Minutes.
Well,
Don't forget Miss Tara Strong.
Tara Strong gets to come in. I mean, Miss Minutes, I've got her right here with me always.
Yes, you do. Oh God, you put it out there. I should have jumped back. Who would have thought that animated clock would bring so much fear and pain? So, all right. Well, let's transition out of Loki for our last news story of the night, and that would be Miss Marvel. So, EW Entertainment Weekly has put out a story, kind of, I guess, we marching towards our next Disney Plus series, Miss Marvel. They sat down with executive producer and co-creator of the comic character of the same name, Sana Amanat, to address the fan response to Kamala Khan's new superpowers in the MCU in comparison to the comics. So the quote reads, "Obviously, so much of the show is an adaptation, and we thought it was important to make sure that her powers are linking to larger stories in the Marvel Universe. We wanted to make sure that there is a little bit more story to tell after this series. Obviously, she goes into the Marvels. The powers do look different, which is very controversial. I know that people are like, how dare you change your powers? I know people are upset about it. But as someone who's probably one of the closest people to this character from the inception, and having spoken to G. Willow Wilson about this as well, I think Willow and I have always felt that this made sense. This was the right move because there are bigger stories to tell. It's really fun to give Kamala a different kinds of powers that feel big in scope and cinematic in a different way. We can do a lot of fun things with her. I don't want to spoil too much about how she uses her powers, but they're fun and bouncy. At the same point, the essence of what the powers are in the comics is there, both from the metaphorical standpoint and from the visual standpoint. We're doing the embiggening fist. We're doing the elements that make her feel and look kind of crazy, but also really cool. I think it's going to be familiar to people, but at the same time, different in a fresh and unique way. Now, earlier a week or so ago, Kevin Feige spoke to Empire about this and said, we adapt comics. It's not an exact translation. Kamala came about in a very specific time in comic book continuity. She is now coming into a very specific time in the MCU continuity, and those two things didn't match. What we will learn about where those powers come from and how they come about is specific to the MCU. You will see great comic splash panels in some of our action sequences. If you want big, giant hands and arms, well, they're here in spirit, if not stretchy plastic type. And then he said, as for why her power is so specific, he said it taps into the future story as it connects to her other friends that she will meet in the upcoming film, The Marvels. She's interested in knowing, great, what does that mean? I'm Asgardian? Did it mean I got hit by gamma rays? No, it seemingly is none of those things. It goes to her own past and her own heritage and lineage. So, one could say that the co-creator is playing the game, playing, I'm going to be nice and not be upset about it. But G. Willow Wilson's also gone on record when the leaks started coming out about the power set and how happy she was. I'm going to be, call me Marvel shill. Again, we do this show at that point. I'll admit it. You got me. But I'm going to believe the creators on this one, that especially since they are co-executive producers on this show, that their sign off on this does matter. But I also understand why fans could be upset, but they wanted that at that point. But as we can read between the lines, Kevin Feige, it sounds like we can't have two characters that have very similar power sets in the MCU right now.
So I'm of a mixed mind about this. So on one hand, you have the creators of Ms. Marvel, the character, whom basically are signing off and endorsing this and saying that while it's not the exact same that they did in the comics, they are fine with this vision. They support this vision. They encourage this vision. Great. Okay, perfect. You also have Feige saying they're trying to stick to the spirit of who the character is. That is, to me, the utmost important thing. Mm-hmm. Changes are fine, but if you get the spirit of who the character is, okay, that's what matters. On the other hand, if behind closed doors they're really just doing this because they don't want two people with stretchy powers, that's just dumb. That's dumb, lame reason.
But we have seen them make dumb moves like that in the past.
Sure, I mean, I guess, but this is just, I don't understand it. I mean, we just had Spider-Man No Way Home, right? All kinds of people with spider powers in that movie, right? Like, I don't like it.
I'm not defending it.
We just had Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. All kinds of magic going on in that place. I just think it's a lame reason. But if there are other elements, if they're wanting to tie her closer to Monica, to Carol, then okay, I'm on board. And I'm certainly not going to judge them in advance of seeing the show. But I appreciate and I believe the creators of the character. I'm sure there's an element of this, and I just think it's kind of lame.
Yeah, and again, I've loved to seen her truly in her being. Yes, again, I'm a fan of the character. I really enjoyed what the books that I've read with her in it. The idea of the show is going to be just some people writing off the show because she doesn't have the power set. The reason Kamala Khan connects with so many different people is so important. We said this during our trailer breakdown when the first trailer came out. Representation.
Yes.
People are going to see of her descent and her heritage saying, again, it goes back to what we said with Moon Knight saying, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" That matters so much to see this character on the screen. What is more important? Are the character's power sets more important, or to your point, what we said during that trailer review, the essence of who Kamala is, the character, her story, her journey to understand of wrestling in two worlds, wanting and being the fangirl who looks up to these heroes, looks up to Carol Danvers, and then her own personal heritage, religion, culture. How do you wrestle those two things together? How do you live in those two worlds? Again, like her powers in the comics, when she has her power set, it involves her twisting her whole body and changing herself into and growing into herself. When she first got her power, she actually shapeshifted into her idol, Carol Danvers, and that heavily ties into it. But that's her comic book origin. And as I've said, always, 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 if you watch the show and you said, "Man, I really wish she had those powers," like, guess what? Open Marvel Unlimited. Go to your comic book shop. You still have that character. You still have that power set.
Yeah, co-sign everything you just said.
Yeah. But again, I am not saying if you are upset about this that you have no right to be. No, be
Oh,
upset
sure.
about it. Yeah, I get it. If that character made it and the power set, again, that's totally cool. It's just like right now, it's done. It's not changing right now. So I'm going to be, as I always say, sit back and reserve judgment until we actually see it in action.
Yep, pretty much.
So, all right. Well, that is all the news we got. So let's take our next ad break before we get into listener feedback and then Factor Fiction and Comic Book Club. So, listeners, as you know, again, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud. So, give you that 3 count to turn that volume down before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we're back. So, we only had one. You put up the call at that point. We've had a lot of people privately message us at that point for one reason or another. And I think one of them definitely didn't want to put out spoiler talk for Doctor Strange at that point, just in case some people hadn't seen it at that point. So, hit us with some feedback. What do we got?
All right, first up from Dallin, he says, "I realize I'm late for next week's episode." Oh, you're right on time for this, I guess. He
Yep.
says, "Is it a contradiction that Stephen and Mark had to balance the scales, even though there are really 3 personalities?"
Hmm.
I feel like for me, it's really not a contradiction, just because a lot of that was all like metaphorical, and in their minds there is no third personality, so they're not going to account for a third one when it's was all about the two. Or maybe those two represented, maybe they represent one of the hearts with Jake representing the other one, and they just never got that explained. I don't think it's a contradiction. I also don't think it was the cleanest explanation either. I do think there's room to question it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the balancing at that point is more of like the headcanon, similar to what you said. Like they personally are not aware of Jake, but then the argument is, well, they still have no explanation of who did some of those actions of killing the people and taking everyone down at that point. So are they really balanced? Are they really at peace? So yeah, it's kind of messy at that point, but the headcanon is they really don't truly know about a third personality. They may
Hmm.
have inklings of it, but they're not sure. And so they're balanced in their way of that they come to terms with themselves, but they have no way to wrestle with the so-called Jake Lockley because they've either in denial or they really truly don't believe a third exists. So
Okay, from David, with Feige stating that the death of He Who Remains caused the botched spell in No Way Home, as well as the events of Multiverse of Madness, could that also be a catalyst for a Sony Peter Parker being used in a Marvel show or movie? Personally, yes, that could be the end story reason for it, but the much bigger thing would be, would Marvel be willing to use a Peter Parker who was not Tom Holland in a movie that did not also include Tom Holland?
mm, I think it's on the table, but I think it's Sony needs to figure out what the heck they're doing with if they're going to do anything with a Spider-Man in their own universe.
Well, I kind of felt like the best chance at that would have been Tobey Maguire in Multiverse of Madness. The best chance of that scenario happening. But I guess we'll see. Maybe someday.
Before we get to the next one, we got a spur of the moment question from All in the Game. Thoughts on Phase 4 so far, and does that change if the remaining two movies of the year have similar Rotten Tomato cinema scores to Doctor Strange 2?
Um, well, I would say so far I'm really enjoying it. I think Phase Four has been super strong, and I love how diverse it has been, especially with who's been both in front of and behind the camera. Uh, Rotten Tomato scores and cinema scores are not going to change my personal opinions of the movie, no matter where they're at. I like
Mhm.
Eternals more than what its Rotten Tomato score is. There's other movies that I like less than their Rotten Tomato score. Rotten Tomatoes and cinema scores, they matter. Like, people who try to tell you they don't matter at all, I mean, that's really not true. Because people do use them, but they just don't matter to me personally.
Yeah, I'm with you, Brent. Like this is, and I've heard this a lot from people that have questioned the MCU of like, oh, it's very cookie cutter and things like that. But there's been a lot of chances they have taken with what they do, and not only just putting stuff on Disney Plus, but also the films they've done in the. I'm not going to say taken huge risks at that point, but they've definitely dabbled in more, a little more experimental than just a standard. We're entering right now, starting with Doctor Strange. At that point, we're getting a series of sequels to properties. So we're not going to have an original project for a little bit of time right now. So the
In
question
the
is,
movies, you mean?
yeah, in the movies, yeah, in the movies. So it's going to be very interesting to see, do these sequels stand up to the original, whether it be box office at that point? Could I see Rotten Tomato scores be a little bit lower than their predecessors at that point? Yeah, I think it's not just because of Doctor Strange. It's just I'm kind of reading the tea leaves in the sense of where we've gotten. I think we might have one or two that meet or exceed it, but I do see a little bit of a dip, but not so much that saying the crazy uppercase, lowercase, the MCU is dead. No one cares anymore. We're not there yet. So
People say that. I've never heard that before.
I know. Guess what? The MCU is over.
Bury it.
All right. What's our next question?
All right, from Anthony from DC Outlaw. All right, yeah, this is definitely going to have spoiler stuff, like we talked about. So, um, he says, "Do you feel like the Illuminati were almost the same caliber as Ralph Boner? The main difference is being they were actually the characters they said they were, instead of being a dumb joke." A dumb joke. I feel like they all amounted to basically nothing, as they were all from the same alternate universe and were all killed, so they don't mean much for the continuing of the MCU like it would have been had Quicksilver really returned in WandaVision, as it had initially seemed like he did. We saw Xavier, but it doesn't affect the existence or non existence of mutants in the main universe, and the same goes for Black Bolt with the Inhumans or Reed Richards with the Fantastic Four, and they basically amounted to big jokes in their deaths. The other members were variants of existing characters, so their appearances were only as interesting as any of the variants in What If. In summary, I think the cameos of Black Bolt, Mr. Fantastic, and Xavier ended up being pointless and or jokes and mean nothing to the future, just like Ralph Boner. Do you agree?
Um, right now, I can see where he's at. I don't agree. Just, and I'll explain why. But I can see the perspective on that. You feel like it was a Ralph Boner. I think it's a little different in that sense, but I can kind of see where you're coming from, DC Outlaw. But the reason I don't agree is the Illuminati in this case. Okay, yeah, a bunch of cameos at that point, but the idea of what they were, these so-called most powerful beings at that point, determining their universe's kind of structure. I mean, again, those five, you don't see a huge Avengers assemble sequence. It's those five took down Thanos at that point. It wasn't a whole team. We don't know what other heroes exist out there necessarily. And there might have been an Avengers assemble moment, but we didn't see it in what they showed us, in showing the idea that even the so-called most powerful, smartest people in the universe still couldn't take one person, one superpowered being. Wanda Maximoff was able to school them at that point. It was about using them to show how dangerous she truly is, no matter what universe she's in.
This one's kind of tough. Do I feel like the Illuminati are on the same caliber as Ralph Boner? I don't. In general, I don't. So regarding Ralph Boner, like it's important to remember, like there's never anything like truly telling us that WandaVision was like had multiversal implications, right? Like there's
Hmm.
nothing in the actual story really making us think that, other than when Agatha finally makes this one line about, well, your brother was dead, so I had to bring another one here. But by that point, we already know that everything she's saying really isn't true anyway. So I'm not real sure. I don't know. I think people get hung up on that, and it was stunt casting, and I think it was great stunt casting. Is it my favorite joke? No, it's not my favorite joke, but I still think it's funny, and it really amuses me how much it riles up Snell. So
I
looking
mean,
forward
again,
to him hearing that one.
he got bonered.
Regarding the rest of the Illuminati, I don't know. Like to me, the thing about them, let's set aside Reed Richards for a second. Every other person played a version of their character in live action, and in a live action Marvel property, and I think that's really really cool that they put that group together. Yeah, a lot of us thought this was going to be like a multiversal Illuminati, but you know what? Like for me, like when I'm reading the Illuminati and the comics and stuff, the cool thing about it is it's like it's still our main heroes, it's our main characters, our main people who are involved. I kind of prefer like I feel like at this point maybe the Illuminati, like the idea of one has been placed into Doctor Strange's mind, and maybe he's going to look into creating an Illuminati, like in the whatever universe you want to call it, the 616 universe as they called it, or the 1999 I think it is.
Yeah.
Like the handbook says, whatever universe, like in the Sacred Timeline one, maybe they're going to come up with their own. And I've seen people say that they think that's already in play. Look to the Shang-Chi mid credit scene for ideas on that. To me, like this movie wasn't about those characters. I thought, yes, they were cameos, so they weren't major parts like what we saw in Spider-Man No Way Home with Tobey and Andrew. But they came in, they fulfilled a role. Yes, there was also some fan service there, which people seem to think
Hmm.
fan service is a bad thing. It's not,
Oh,
and
give it to
it
me.
was really cool. I mean,
I'll take it.
I would ask this question: are you happy you got to see Patrick Stewart as Professor X one more time?
Yes.
Or with the fan casting of John Krasinski as Reed Richards, are you happy you got to see that? Even if this is his only appearance ever, they did it. Great. Maybe Krasinski doesn't want to play Reed Richards. For the record, I think he is. But maybe he doesn't want to play him long term. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thanks for coming in and doing this one thing. Like he didn't owe anything to anyone. He just did this cool little cameo. And just think about that scene of like how cool it was that we had the Fantastic Four and the X-Men directly referenced in an MCU project for the first time. Not loose, not just naming a city like Madripoor, but direct actual characters from those properties for the first time in a Marvel Studios project. To me, that alone was worth it. Add to it Maria as Captain Marvel, which or getting to see Haley Atwell, her Peggy Carter, again as Captain Carter, because pretty much everybody loved Captain Carter in What If. Like I love that scene. I think it's a blast. Is it a joke? Yeah, I guess kind of. Like them telling Wanda exactly how to kill Black Bolt. But
Yeah.
it also the more the point of it was, at least to me, in my opinion, was to show like how far Wanda had gone.
Yeah.
Like even farther than what we saw at Carmitage.
Yeah, exactly. Top Gun in the chat. He has no desire to see the movie. He's just here for apparently my voice, and he's not complaining.
Hey, whatever it takes. Thanks
Yep,
for checking it out.
exactly. He also says it was a shame how Professor X got killed off, though. I heard people saying, they part of them wish that he wasn't in this movie just because of the great send off, the quote unquote great send off that Logan represented to the character. Again, it's a variant. It's another version of Professor X. I get the idea that you wish that was the last time you saw Professor X at that point, but I'm sorry. I'll take the fan service of seeing Professor Charles Xavier, played by Patrick Stewart, in the yellow floating chair from the animated series. I'll take it.
And not just that, but in my opinion, Patrick Stewart coming and playing a different version of this character in, sorry, I'm going to say objectively the most iconic world of Marvel in media, at least in live action media. That doesn't take away from his great performance in Logan or anything he did with the other Fox X-Men movies. Where, I mean, if anything, it's like, well, doesn't like the fact that he died in this movie take from him being in that movie later with no explanation? He's
Or
in
as Top
sort of a
Gun says, giving the mental chiropractic adjustment.
Right. Well, apparently she actually ripped his head off if you look at it in slow motion.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, maybe it's just me, but if my choices are have Patrick Stewart come in and do a cameo and that's it, or don't have him at all and you never get that. Like, to me, yes, I will take that. One, you're honoring what came before with Marvel projects before, including projects that Feige worked on. And two, like, he is an iconic version of the character, right? He's great casting. Everybody loves him. This is honoring him while at the same time they can still go forward with their own Charles Xavier in the future. And hey, Doctor Strange is the only person who's met him, and I guess Wanda Maximoff who's met him. So when he does pop up, like, it might be interesting to see their interactions. I maintain I love those cameos.
And I do want to bring something up because you brought it up in a TikTok, and if I could remember who the TikTok person was, but bring up, we talked about them chart the comment of Doctor Strange when he said Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four, and he says, didn't you chart in the 60s? We had made the kind of guess at that point saying, oh, so they existed in the 60s, the Fantastic Four. Well, you put forth a TikTok person who said, well, it's not necessarily that, because there was a legit musical group called the Fantastic Four, who did exist in our real life 60s, who did chart in the 60s at that point. So Strange maybe actually making a kind of an offhanded joke about the musical group, not the real Fantastic Four superhero group.
Which maybe sounds out there until you remember how we were basically introduced to his character in the first movie. Mm-hmm. Doing musical trivia on when bands charted, including in the 60s and 70s.
Yep. So on the game saying, so is the Illuminati concept a one and done? We don't get another one version going forward. Would you want one? I do not think we're done. I think Strange is that's going to be something that's going to be in the back of his mind.
Well, another thing from TikTok, this was from Theories by T. We may have already seen a version of the Illuminati.
Yes, that was also very good too.
At the end of Shang-Chi in the mid-credit scene, you've got Wong, the Sorcerer Supreme, you've got Captain Marvel, and you've got Bruce Banner. They're meeting with Shang-Chi and with Katie. That, we don't know that it is, we don't know that it's not, but that could be a version of the Illuminati. Would I want one? Yeah, absolutely. But I always thought it was a really cool concept in the comics too. Be that when Captain America joined, or when he got his mind wiped by him, or when the Beast filled in when Professor X was, one of the 7 times he's died in the comics. I like the concept of the Illuminati. So yes, please do those kind of things.
Well, death doesn't matter anymore in the mutant verse, so here we are.
Well, isn't that the truth?
Yes. So what else we got?
All right, from Tim Rooney. He says, here's a question, sort of follow-up from last week's. This past Sunday, myself and a few other coworkers had to explain what needed to be seen before going to see Multiverse of Madness to the definition of a general audience member, and we saw that person's eyes glaze over. Has the amount of content and rigid continuity made it hard for new people to jump into the new stories, a la jumping into Chris Claremont's X-Men run midstream?
I appreciate the tip of the hat to Mr. Claremont at that point, but I could definitely follow you. What do you think, Brent, about this one? Is it becoming too much homework, and have they gotten to a point where homework is somewhat necessary? You can still watch and appreciate the movies, but not be as fully informed.
This question might have meant more to me if we had not just gotten Moon Knight and weren't about to get Ms. Marvel. 2 brand new properties, right? Brand new we just had like Shang-Chi and the Eternals. All of those, we don't know for sure about Ms. Marvel yet, but Moon Knight, Shang-Chi, Eternals, all of those, you didn't need anything that came before them. Were there general broad references to Thanos or whatever? Sure, of course there were. But they were broad enough that I don't think they hindered anything. That said, I was talking with Tim from the DC Squadcast the other day, whom hasn't seen Multiverse of Madness, and Ray and I were talking to him, and we're like, we think you would really enjoy it. Like, it seems like something you would get a kick out of. You need to see WandaVision first. And then he told us he hasn't actually finished Endgame. So it's like, okay, wow. I would recommend for WandaVision that you finish Endgame. But if you absolutely had to, I think WandaVision's the only required viewing for Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. Mm-hmm. I don't think Endgame is. For Doctor Strange, I definitely don't think Endgame is. For WandaVision, you everything you need to know by the end of that show, you will know it. They will tell you anything you
Yeah.
need. By the end of it, you may not know stuff as early as the show assumes you do. Like episode 4, the beginning of that, when Monica comes back to life, may seem kind of weird to you, but they will explain everything to you. So it, Tim is onto something here because it is harder. Sure,
Hmm.
it is absolutely harder. At the same time, I to me, Marvel is trying to think how to put this. They're rewarding their long-term fans by still serving those group. But now it's like, especially with Disney Plus, I really feel like they have their cake and they can eat it too. Because we can get something like Spider-Man No Way Home that calls back beyond the MCU, all the way back to 20 years ago. And then we can also have the Eternals, or we can get Moon Knight. Where Moon Knight, especially, there's like what, like the GRC is on in the background somewhere, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. Oh, and like a symbol or something on a kid's jacket that means Kang effectively. There's nothing in there. Like, to me, we're having both. You know, we're
Yeah.
getting the deep ties with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, so massively tying back to WandaVision, and we just had Moon Knight in the same week, tying back to nothing but itself.
Yeah. And again, when we get to the Marvels, and again, as we talked about in the news segments at that point, Miss Marvel is going to be in the Marvels. So the question is, for those that don't watch Miss Marvel for whatever reason, how will they talk about this character in the history of the 6 episodes that we're getting, bring that into the Marvels very quickly, that for those that didn't see it can at least understand who Kamala Khan is, how she came to be, and what is she doing in this movie.
I think they have to do what Doctor Strange did. We'll tell you the basics.
Hmm.
Wanda had kids. Wanda lost kids. That combined with the Darkhold drove her mad. Okay, like you've given us the basics. WandaVision actually fleshes it out, actually explains it for you. I got to assume that's what'll happen with Captain Marvel and the Marvels.
Yeah, Top Gun saying, I think that it's a good to have diversity in your properties. Black Widow, The Eternals, Shang-Chi, Moon Knight, etc. all needed no context, in my opinion. Having a movie that draws on continuity for the hardcore fans. So, yeah, again.
I maybe disagree with Black Widow a little bit. I feel like the context of when that story took place, maybe,
Mhm.
but well, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely stuff in there that I don't know. Maybe on that one, but the others, yes, 100%.
Yeah, so. All right, so those are all the questions. So let me pull up Factor Fictions from last week. So these were from you. Number one, Loki season 2 will be after Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania. 88% say fact, 12% said fiction. Number two, Gore, the God Butcher, will kill an Egyptian god in Thor: Love and Thunder. 55% said fact, 45% said fiction. And number three, Deadpool and Deadpool 2 will be added to Disney Plus in the US prior to Deadpool 3 releasing. 72% said fact, 28% said fiction. Waldron actually did speak on the idea of Deadpool being in the movie. He said it was talked about, but just didn't seem, it just wasn't the right move. So,
I honestly figured if it was going to happen, it would be in a credit scene.
yeah. So, all right. So here are mine for this week. Number one, the MCU's version of the Fantastic Four will introduce the Council of Reeds. And how this question came about, I have started my beginning reading of Hickman's run of Fantastic Four. So that became very present in basically his initial arc at that point. It's not the first time the Council of Reeds have been seen, but that's what kind of spurred that question. So, not pointing out a movie, but will this new franchise in the MCU introduce the Council of Reeds?
So you just mean eventually?
Eventually, yes.
I will say fact.
Okay. I think we're going to get a little strange. I like the idea. Again, they've already, with Multiverse of Madness, Waldron did talk about how Hickman's run did kind of impact his kind of writing on it, how much it influenced him. So I think Jonathan Hickman will see a little bit more, and I think they'll take homages from the Council of Reeds of his setup of the character. So I'm fact on that one. Number two, we will see a spin-off Disney Plus show focusing on Sorcerer Supreme Wong.
Man, Benedict Wong he's campaigning for it. I've seen a couple different quotes and things
Yeah.
from him wanting to do one. I'm gonna say fact. I I don't know. I kind of feel like he's dropping some hints, and I mean, his character's gained in popularity. Yeah, I'll go fact.
Yeah, I want to see this. I want again. This is a time that we can kind of see. Maybe we'll see the time of what existed during the snap, how he was Sorcerer Supreme at that point, and the different adventures, what it means to really be the Sorcerer Supreme from his perspective. So yeah, I'm definitely fact on that one. And this one, I told you over text this morning that I got one on there that you're gonna love and you're gonna get a good laugh at. All right, here we
Let's
go.
find out.
The MCU's version of Kang the Conqueror will not be a descendant of Reed Richards, but of Tony Stark. Yes, even in death, Tony
You're right.
Stark creates yet another villain.
You're right. That's awesome. I love the idea. I love the spirit of it. I'm gonna go fiction. I do think he'll be tied to Reed, but I love the idea of Tony Stark, being behind another one.
I'm gonna be fact just because I know how much it ticks some people off about it because
God,
that's why I
that'd be
added
so amazing.
that's why I added the whole little thing. Even in death, he still creates villains.
Yes, please. I hope I'm wrong. That'd be glorious.
And I'll give a real reason just for besides being a troll about it. Um, we don't know. I know we've seen Reed Richards, quote unquote, in an MCU movie at that point, but will it connect as much at that point? Will it land as much as Tony Stark still will land with the fans?
I guess that will depend on who is cast as him.
Mm-hmm.
Krasinski, I think, has a chance at that.
Yes.
Some no name no one's ever heard of, especially after seeing Krasinski, I think people will have a harder time with.
Yeah, they'll say, "Where's my Krasinski? I want my pen." That's hashtag not mine, Mr. Fentag.
Yep.
All right, so I will post those on Sunday afternoon as usual. Give us your votes, and we'll see how y'all feel about those. So, all right, let us conclude our episode by looking at our comic book club Annihilation issue 2. All right, so we got a lot of big action beats in number one, and we don't get another major, like a lot of this was kind of a sit back and reflect until the very end of the issue. But what did you think about it as a whole?
Overall, I like it. I gotta ask this question though about Cammy because I don't remember. I know her deal is she follows Drax around.
Yes.
Do we know like where she came from? Like I genuinely don't remember like where, like how did she meet up with Drax? Where did
Good
she
night,
come
Top
from?
Gun. Well, I mean, from the series itself, like when the prison that Drax was on, the ship crashed into her town at that point. That's how she kind of hooked. And I say hook up,
Okay.
not in the scandalous sense, but that's how she kind of tagged along with him.
Okay.
Is that she was there? So,
Does she ever appear after this series?
I can't fully comment on that because it's been a while since I remember. So it doesn't stick on my mind. Doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Well, okay. I was just curious about that.
I'm personally, she kind of annoys me. So
I mean, I kind of like her, but it just I wasn't sure. So, the issue in general, I could say this about every issue of this series. I love the artwork. It's kind of weird to see Thanos in different, without his armor, his standard costume, if you will. It's
kind of a sojourn kind of.
Yes, like every now and then I see him and I'm like, is that him or is that supposed to be someone else? But it's basically a flashback dealing with him and is it Moondragon and Phyla or Captain Marvel at the time. A lot of the issue is pertaining to them, and I really like them. But overall, I think for me the real highlight is probably when Ronan, the former accuser, decides he's still going to do his accusing and just takes out a whole bunch of other Kree leaders.
Yeah, you go back to that scene where the flashback with basically Thanos ripping off, Moonstar's, basically aka Drax's daughter's ear, and it's in a box. It's like, and I know Thanos is hardcore, but man, he's still not pulling punches at this point. But the issue does a very good job, in my opinion, of putting some players that if you read the previous miniseries at that point, you've already got a good idea who they are. But bringing them into the fold and gives those who are just following the miniseries itself an understanding about where they're at this point. But yeah, Ronan don't care. Ronan is not a fan of who is now running the Kree Empire. He is still loyal to the Supreme Intelligence, and God help you if or Hala help you if you besmirch the Supreme Intelligence, because yeah, you gone at
Yeah,
that
no
point.
joke.
um, and it's almost like when Ronan takes out the kind of the Kree commanders at that point. It's Have you ever seen the movie Kiss Kiss Bang Bang?
I have not. No.
Okay, well, there's a scene, and it's more funny at that point. Robert Downey Jr. is trying to interrogate uh, a person that has information, and Val Kilmer's with him at that point, and so he takes a takes a gun, and basically, it's a revolver, so he puts in a bullet, spins it, he says, "All right, I'm gonna, count to three. If where is the girl?" And then pulls the trigger and shoots the person in the head, not meaning to shoot the person in the head. And Val Kilmer's just standing there like, "What did you just do?" And that kind of reminded me, just like
All right.
Quill,
Yeah.
like excuse me, Nova standing there is like, what did you just do? You took out basically the commanders of basically who represent our main infantry unit. They are not going to stand with us anymore.
Yeah. And I love Nova being in charge and command of this.
Mhm.
I think the jacket over his costume is a weird choice. I've always thought that about these issues.
Yeah,
But I
he's
love
he's
the
hearkening back to the Avengers Brown Jacket days.
yeah. I love the leadership though that he has taken over in this case. Like, and he will just stand up to Ronan like that.
Yeah, exactly. But we kind of get that kind of it's already we bring back some people from the Super Scroll miniseries at that point. We see Super Scroll in this kind of tomb-like state, talking about Vaxgora and what happened at that point. But then they get interrupted by basically Annihilus's kind of mercenary minions coming to take them all down. But what I do love, I think my favorite splash page of this entire one is Imprisoned
I
Galactus.
knew it. I knew you were gonna say that. That's
Oh
just
my
a
gosh, it was so good
yes,
to seeing
yes.
that.
Beautiful piece of art. He's in prison. You got Silver Surfer underneath him, also captured. Yes, absolutely.
But I'm just waiting for, and again, I've read this, but it's been a long while. Thanos is playing Annihilus. We all know
Oh
he's
yeah.
playing it.
Oh yeah.
He's basically said as much. I'm just waiting for when that turn is going to happen.
Yeah. You know it's coming. You know it's. I mean, who's surprised that? Oh, Thanos is not the most trustworthy partner to have.
No, completely honorable at that point. But yeah, so issue 3 next week, and yeah, so another good issue. So
Yes.
all right, so that brings volume 108 to a close. So, but again, reminder listeners, we will be back next Wednesday night, 9:10 Eastern Standard Time, live with a potential guest. So be on the lookout for that. Again, the audio will drop on Friday morning. We want to again thank our official sponsor, organicpricebooks.com, for all your omnibus collect edition needs. Use that code Marvel GUA at checkout for $2 off every single order. Brent, tell people how they can follow you.
Yeah, Brentak Prime on Twitter and on TikTok. DMs are open, so if you don't want to tweet them publicly, send those questions in.
You can follow me on Twitter at Chris Balga. You can follow this show on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast. You can follow my other show, World's Finest True Believers, at Finest Believers. You can email the show at Marvel Alliance Podcast at gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GWayPod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback, ask questions. Continue to rate and review Marvel Alliance on its solo feed, GUA Network feed on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or whatever podcatcher your choice may be. Thank you all for joining us live in the chat. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent. So for post-credits discussion, let's go back to the movie, specifically the movie theaters in this case. And there was a story coming out kind of around the time, last week early on, about movie theaters upcharging for Marvel and DC movies specifically. This was Variety, and they were speaking to AMC Theater CEO Adam Aron about extra charging. And he said it was a big success. We look at our market share on the Batman, and we clearly did better by charging that dollar premium. It was only $1. It's not like we charged double the price. There was so much demand, and that people were willing to pay. And he said, it's pretty simple. We're a publicly traded company. And when you do important things, that's a duty to talk about it publicly. And as a company, we believe in transparency. And basically, all he said I can say is that on the Batman, we know that we're better off from having charged a dollar more. We have plenty of discount programs that we've actively been embracing, discount Tuesdays. We've rejiggered all the matinee pricing strategies this year, the A list, our subscription program. So he's not upset about it. But then Deadline basically confirmed that this was really going to be happening, in particular with Marvel at that point. And so basically, they had a nice little chart that said the average domestic price for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was $12.99. And AMC, they charge for a standard show $14.84, Cinemark $11.55, Regal $13.77. In comparison to another just non-Marvel DC superhero movie, 12.23 domestic average price. AMC charged $13.70, Cinemark $10.75, Regal $13.14. So, what do you feel about this idea that movie theaters are going to start basically upcharging for certain, we'll just call them the blockbuster films?
Batman was the first one to do it, right?
That's what they're leading us to believe. Yes.
It honestly, I feel like it's a really good business idea.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think there's anybody who was gonna go pay $13 for a movie ticket who won't pay $14 for a movie ticket. And so at some point, yes, there's a cutoff to what you'll do, but by jumping up such a small amount, I bet most people don't even notice. Now, if you want to talk about most people not noticing a price increase and where that sits ethically, that's probably a different discussion to have. But business wise, it makes a lot of sense, and it does make it more valuable to have things like A List or other
Mhm.
similar programs. I am an A List subscriber, so I'll be honest. Personally, I don't care. Like, it doesn't. Let me
Yeah.
know when the A List price changes, and that's when I will care. But in the grand scheme of things, it does always stink for consumers to have to pay more. But I get it. They tried it with Batman. It was successful. Of course, they're going to try it with the next big Marvel film.
Yeah, I go to a Regal typically at that point. I'm seeing Top Gun at an AMC just because it's showing early and it works out for my schedule when it drops on the Wednesday before the preview night. But with Regal, they offer their kind of version of A list, and it's $18 a month. Now in the summer, yeah, I'll probably be able to I would have to see basically 2 movies to basically pay that off at that point to justify to kind of break even a little bit ahead, but to really do it as 3. And mainly that will happen mostly for me during the summer, and I could cancel any time, but right now it's still I don't see enough movies to really justify an ongoing subscription with them just because of time and family and job and other things I like doing at that point. But you're right. If you're a subscription until that subscription price increases, yeah, it doesn't really matter to you. But to your point, a dollar, what does a dollar matter? Especially when people want to see these movies. It, the idea that in other areas, sometimes it costs upwards of 15, 16, $17 just because of location itself.
And not even
Uh,
accounting for IMAX or 3D or
yes,
the more premium formats.
exactly. And so, but we also got to realize too, these theaters are still hurting from the pandemic, and
Uh,
they still
or
are.
in AMC's case, before the pandemic.
Yeah. So the fact that they're upcharging a dollar, it's just like we're fighting for our survival in the sense of picking up our losses. So if we're charging a dollar at that point, again, it's up to you. You can go and see these or wait till it shows up on VOD or on a streaming service at that point and have to wait to be part of the conversation. There are choices. It's not the unlimited amount of choices that we would want. But again, but beggars can't be choosers at that point.
Sure. Would we rather pay less money? Of course,
Yeah.
everyone would rather pay less money. But then the companies, the business, their employees, they make less money. It's cyclical. Like, that's how it goes. So
Yeah.
honestly, I'm not surprised. It it does make me wonder, like, how some of the other films feel like, oh, we're not worthy of paying the higher price for our movie. Okay, whatever.
Well, I mean, again, we're gonna call. I guarantee you, Top Gun's gonna fall into this category.
I'd be shocked
Jurassic
if it didn't.
Jurassic Park. Anything again. summer blockbuster that is action or has a lot of pull to it. It's like, I'm just gonna use that example. It's a movie I want to see, but I'm probably not gonna get out to theaters in time for it to see it everything everywhere all at once. That is not a movie that they're gonna put $1 or 2.
Same. I want to
But
see it, but I don't think I'll get to it in theaters.
but you know what? It's gonna be one of those as soon as I can get it, either on streaming or I might do a blind buy because there are people I trust that I know have seen it. Have said I'm gonna like it. I trust the recommendation. That might be a blind buy for me, but I will not regret that.
Yeah, I want to see that one. I'm like, the timing is not
Yep.
great right now. But in general, I get why people are upset, but it's kind of like when Netflix raises their price a buck. People are gonna grumble about it, but nobody's really canceling over the extra dollar.
And guess what? Disney Plus is gonna do it soon too. Just telling you.
Just in time for me to have to do it to pay the higher price since I have that 3-year deal at the start.
Yep, all the good things coming to an end, my friend. So,
That's
including
right.
this show. So, hope you enjoyed our post credits. Again, that transition, I was on the ball with this one today. So, we'll see y'all next Wednesday night. Catch you later. Bye bye.